good afternoon. It depends on where you're watching this video from. I am so excited to be on this platform. My name is Omo. I'm a registered nurse here in Canada. I am happy I'm able to do this video today. I'm an internationally trained nurse from Nigeria. I schooled in Nigeria and I practiced in Nigeria as a nurse before I moved to Canada. I'll say this video is long overdue. I've had so many questions from friends and colleagues back in Nigeria asking me, how do I get licensed and practice as a nurse in Canada? So this video is so important to me and I'm so happy that I'm able to do it today. In as much as we are thinking of getting our license to practice as a nurse in Canada, I would like to mention that you should also be thinking of the different pathways on how you can immigrate to Canada. I'm not an immigration consultant. I'm only sharing my advice that it is important that you look through the different pathways on how you can come into Canada. I'm going to be dropping the link in the description as well for you to follow. To start with, I jotted down some things, so I'm not going to miss out any points. Well, because I've gone through the process, I'll share some useful tips from my experience and my journey as well. And subsequently, I'll be sharing some information. So if there's anything you'd like me to talk about, you'd like me to share with you, I will encourage us to put down in the comment section. I'll go through them as well. So let's start. In Canada, we have 3 regulated nursing professions. They are the registered practical nurse, which is also known as licensed practical nurse. It depends on the province. So different province, some province will say licensed practical nurse, some province will say registered practical nurse. So it depends. We also have registered nurse and we have registered psychiatric nurse. So you could apply to any of this regulated nursing profession, depends on your training and your competencies. NNAS stands for National Nursing Assessment Service. It's an organization that composes nursing regulatory bodies in Canada. It includes all nursing regulatory bodies in Canada except Quebec, Yukon, Nunavut, and Northwest Territories. It is the first step for internationally trained nurses to make on their journey to practice in Canada as a nurse. So we have different provinces that use this NNAS. We have British Columbia, we have Alberta, we have Saskatchewan, we have Manitoba, we have Ontario, we have Nova Scotia, we have New Brunswick, we have Prince Edward Island, and we have Newfoundland and Labrador. So the role of NNAS is to receive and verify your identification documents, receive and verify your document about your nursing credential, comparing it to Canadian credential, which is known as your entry to practice competencies. It also collects and verify your employment history and your previous nursing registration and licenses. It also issues an advisory report at the end of the assessment. So these are the rules of NNAS. NNAS specifically is for internationally trained nurses who did not have their nursing education in Canada, or who has never gotten licensed to practice in Canada as a nurse. So this NNAS is specifically for IAN, internationally educated nurses. So I would say your responsibility in all of this is to make sure that whatever document you're sending to NNAS is true and complete. So now let's start the NNAS application process. You have to open an account with NNAS. In applying, you have to create an account. I'm going to drop the link in the description as well for you to see and to follow. You create an account with your email, you answer the 3 security questions, you read the terms, and you read and agree to the terms and conditions, and you create a new password. Make available your payment card at the time of application to complete the process. So after creating an account with NNAS, there are steps that you must follow. First step is sending in your identification documents. Identification documents that are required are 2 forms of ID, which should be photocopies, not expired, and notarized. Your passport, international passport, it could be your international passport, your driver's license, or other form of government issued photo ID. If there's a name change, you have to send in your birth certificate, legal name change affidavits, your marriage certificate. If there's a divorce, you have to send in that document as well. If your language of instruction is not in English, you should also send in, make sure that your documents are translated. In my case, it was not translated because my documents were in English. In Nigeria, English is a first language, so there was no need to translate any documents. Now that leads us to the second part. Before I forget, there are different ways you could translate your documents. You could translate by an approved institution, college, university, or licensing authority, or you could translate through a certified translator, or you could translate through NNAS for a fee. I think it's about $85 per page. It should be in the NNAS application applicant handbook. I'm going to put the link in the description as well. That leads us to the second part of the NNAS application process. It is the nursing education form. This is a very important step because whatever information your school sends to NNAS is what is going to be used for your assessments. So your assessment is based on whatever information they get from your school or wherever they want you to send the information from. So the nursing education form is in 3 steps. We have part A, part B, and C. Part A, you have to fill that part, and part B and C is by the school. So it is very important for you to let your school know that your transcript is not all they need. They also need the course by course description, which is the syllabus. So you have to send in those documents for your assessments to be well with NNS. Using my case as an example, when I first sent in my nursing education form, my school sent in the transcript of about 4 to 5 pages, which was not enough for NNAS to assess me on. So I kept calling, sending emails, and in my application, anytime I create into my account, it shows under review or in process or in progress. So it was taking so much time. Luckily for me, when I called, the person who spoke with me told me that my school should send in more documents. They only did send 4 to 5 pages of transcript, which is not enough for NNAS to assess me with. So I had to call my school, follow up with my school to send in a course by course description so that my documents will be okay for my assessment with NNAS. So that was what my school did later on. So you have to follow up with your school to send a complete course by course description to NNAS. And that leads us to the third part. The third part is the nursing practice or employment form. And this is basically where you've worked during the past 5 years. If you've worked in more than one place, you have to send in that form to the different organizations or different companies where you've worked for them to fill in that form and send to NNS. So it comes in 2 parts. It has a part B and part C. Part B is the employer information, and part B and C is identification of whoever is filling that part for you. It could be the supervisor or the employer. So whoever is filling for you should put in the identification. So, and that leads us to the third part, which is the nursing registration form. So as a nurse in your country, you were registered with your regulatory body. So you have to send in the form to the nursing regulatory body. Like in my case, I sent it to Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria. So they filled in that form for me, and the whoever filled the form also included his or her identification ID of the official is also needed in that form. So you have to follow up as well, because there could be delay. In my case, there was a lot of delay because I had to keep following. The good thing for me was that I started my NNAS application before I left Nigeria. So I was always going, calling, following them up. So if you know that you want to come to Canada, it is always advisable that you start your NNAS application prior coming to Canada. It makes it easier for you, because when you're in Canada and you start calling and start following up, it's kind of a bit difficult. I don't know about now, but for me then it was like that. And if they ask a question, what is your first language? It's usually English language if you are from Nigeria. So don't put in another language. I knew of someone who put in Yoruba as her first language, and she was asked to go do the IELTS. So in my case, English was my first language, so I wasn't asked to do IELTS. So that was waived for me. So after all of this has been sent to NNAS, they're going to assess your documents, and then they'll give you an advisory report. So the report comes in three parts. It's either comparable, somewhat comparable, or not comparable. So whatever reports you get from NNAS, it does not represent the decision from the nursing regulatory bodies. So they make their own decision after reviewing. So whatever you get from NNAS, the nursing regulatory bodies will make their own decision. And I don't want to forget, if you're applying to NNAS, you should apply to more than one licensed regulatory bodies to practice in Canada. In my case, I did licensed practical nurse and the registered nurse. So it's going to, for me, licensed practical nurse, the assessment came out first before the RN. So while waiting for my registered nurse report to come out, I started working. I'd gotten my registered practical nurse assessment, and that was what I followed up on, and got my license and was working with that. So if you have your registered nurse back in your country, it's advisable to apply for both ROPN or LPN and your registered nurse. So which I think licensed practical nurse comes out first before the registered nurse. But I think the process is faster now compared to how it was before, because they need more nurses. So they're trying to make the process easier and faster for internationally trained nurses. And they keep updating and keep bringing up new things and new ways to make registration easy for internationally trained nurses. Thank you for listening to this video. I'll encourage us to like, share. If there's anything you want me to talk about in my subsequent videos, do put it in the comment section. Thank you for listening. Enjoy and have a beautiful day. I love you all. Bye-bye.